Chapter 28, Dance of Desire. As the evening wore on, the music shifted from the smooth, sophisticated jazz that had been playing earlier to something more contemporary, more upbeat, more danceable. A nervous flutter went through my stomach. I wasn't exactly known for my graceful moves on the dance floor. My usual style was more enthusiastic flailing. But before I could formulate an excuse, or subtly steer us towards the relative safety of the bar, Polo took the lead. It wasn't a question, not really. It was a statement, a gentle but firm assertion of his intentions. He took my hand, his touch sending a familiar shiver up my arm, and I let him lead me onto the crowded dance floor. His hand settled firmly on my waist, his touch possessive yet surprisingly gentle. He pulled me close, and I instinctively stiffened, my body resisting the sudden proximity. But then he started to move, guiding me with a subtle pressure, a confidence that was both reassuring and a little intimidating. And surprisingly, we fit. We moved together easily, our bodies finding a natural rhythm, a silent conversation that flowed as smoothly as the music. I found myself relaxing, my initial resistance melting away, replaced by a growing sense of ease. Of enjoyment. "You're a good dancer," I said, genuinely surprised. I'd expected him to be competent, of course, but this was effortless. Natural. He smiled, a slow, seductive smile that made my heart skip a beat, a smile that promised more. "I have many hidden talents," he murmured, his voice low and suggestive, a husky rumble that sent a fresh wave of shivers down my spine. We danced for several songs, lost in our own little world, oblivious to the stares and whispers of the other guests, and I knew there were stares and whispers. I could feel them like pinpricks on my skin. But for once, I didn't care. I was letting go, surrendering to the moment, to the undeniable, almost overwhelming pull between us, a force that seemed to grow stronger with each passing minute, each touch, each shared glance. I felt a sense of freedom, of release I hadn't experienced in weeks, maybe months, maybe ever. The tightly wound control I usually clung to, the walls I'd so carefully constructed around my heart, were crumbling, dissolving, swept away by the music, by his presence, by the sheer force of our connection. Then the band shifted gears again, launching into a slow song, a romantic ballad, the kind of song that demanded closeness, intimacy. Polo pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around my waist, not possessively but protectively, his body molded against mine, a perfect fit, as if we were two puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. I rested my head on his shoulder, breathing in his scent, that intoxicating, now familiar mix of cologne, clean laundry, and something uniquely him. A scent that had already begun to imprint itself on my senses, on my memory. "I've been wanting to do this all night," he whispered, his breath warm on my ear, sending another delicious shiver through me. I closed my eyes, my body swaying to the music, my senses overwhelmed by his proximity, his touch, his scent, the sheer presence of him. I felt safe. And desired. And utterly, completely, terrifyingly out of control. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once, a tightrope walk between fear and longing. He tightened his hold on me, ever so slightly, his hand moving lower, tracing the curve of my spine through the thin fabric of my dress, sending a wave of heat through me, a jolt of pure, unadulterated desire. He nuzzled my neck, his lips brushing against my skin, a soft, fleeting touch that made me gasp, a soft, involuntary sound, a mixture of pleasure and something else. A warning, a plea. "Polo," I whispered, my voice a shaky breath, a mixture of pleasure and a rising tide of not fear exactly, but a sense of precariousness. This was all happening so fast. "Too fast? I know," he said, his voice husky low, a rumble that vibrated through me. "But I can't help myself," and I knew with a sudden, blinding clarity that he meant it. That he was just as lost, just as overwhelmed, just as swept away by this thing between us as I was. And that realization, that shared vulnerability, was both terrifying and strangely reassuring. I need some air," I stammered, the words tumbling out of my mouth, a desperate attempt to escape the intensity of the moment, the overwhelming feelings. Hesitantly breaking the connection, I pulled back, turning, and practically fled the dance floor, my heart pounding, my cheeks flushed, my body humming with a mixture of arousal and panic. I couldn't breathe. I needed to think. I needed to escape. I pushed open the door with a slight shove and made her way out and onto the large balcony. It was thankfully empty. I went to the railing, placing her hands on the top, feeling the night's chill seep into her bones. I heard the door behind her open, then click shut. Daphne, Polo said. I did not turn around. I heard him approach, his footfalls growing closer. He stood next to me, not speaking. The breeze blew, and the sounds from the party seemed distant. It is beautiful, isn't it? He started, gesturing vaguely. All the lights on the water. I nodded, taking in a shaky breath. The view was beautiful, but I could barely focus on it. Polo reached out and took my hand. I was startled by the simple act. I had been expecting more. A move, a kiss, something. But this felt different. I let him take it. The warmth of his touch radiated up my arm, a comforting, grounding presence. Daphne, Polo, I interrupted, my voice stronger than I expected. I get it. I do. But this. You. Me. It's a lot. Too much, maybe. I can't think when I'm around you. I can't. I trailed off, realizing how close we were standing, the space between our bodies practically buzzing with energy. He brushed a stray curl from my face, his touch gentle, reverent. I know it is. He looked down, then back at me, his eyes searching. I know I can be intense. And I know you're different. You don't play games, and neither do I. I'm done with games. I raised a questioning eyebrow, skeptical despite myself. Polo sighed. Look, the fraternity and my dad, this whole life, it's a lot. Expectations, pressure, bullshit. But you make me want to be better. To be real. He paused, a small, vulnerable smile playing on his lips. I know I messed up. The panties, the way I push things. I was an ass. But I've never felt this way before. Never needed someone the way I need you. His thumb stroked the back of my hand, which he still held. The simple act sent shivers down my spine, a cascade of warmth spreading through my chilled limbs. I searched his eyes, looking for any hint of deception, of manipulation, the games he claimed to be done with. But all I saw was sincerity, vulnerability, and a raw desire that mirrored my own, however much I tried to deny it. I am scared, Polo, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper, the words escaping before I could stop them. Scared of losing myself. Of getting hurt. I am scared too, he confessed, his voice equally soft. But I am more scared of losing you. Of not exploring this. Us? He stepped closer, his body heat enveloping me, a welcome warmth against the cool night air. He lifted his free hand, cupping my cheek, his thumb gently tracing my cheekbone. Let me in, Daph, he whispered, his voice a low, husky rumble that vibrated through me, settling deep in my core. Let me show you who I really am. Who we could be. His eyes held a plea, a vulnerability that stripped away my remaining defenses, my carefully constructed walls. The fight drained out of me, replaced by a wave of longing, of desire that was too powerful to resist, a tide pulling me under. I leaned in, my lips brushing against his. It was a soft, tentative kiss, a question, a promise, a surrender. He responded, his arms wrapping around my waist, pulling me close, deepening the kiss. This time there was no panic, no retreat. Only a slow, burning surrender. His tongue traced my lips, seeking entrance, and I parted them, welcoming him in. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more demanding, a firestorm of sensation. He tasted of champagne and mint, and something uniquely him, a musky, intoxicating flavor that made my head spin. My hands of their own accord, tangled in his hair, my fingers gripping the soft strands, pulling him closer as if I could somehow merge our bodies into one. He broke the kiss, his breath ragged, his eyes dark with desire. He didn't say anything, just looked at me, his gaze asking the question his lips didn't dare to speak. I nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible movement, but it was enough. It was everything. He took my hand, his fingers interlacing with mine, a firm, reassuring grip, and led me not back inside to the party but towards the beach, towards the darkness and the roar of the waves, towards the unknown. He led me towards the beach, his pace quickening, his grip on my hand tightening. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air, a primal rhythm echoing the pounding of my heart. We reached the sand, kicking off our shoes, the cool, damp grains sinking beneath my feet. The moonlight illuminated the beach, casting a silvery glow on the water, but Polo was leading me away from the main stretch, towards a cluster of rocks and dunes that formed a natural cove, shrouded in deeper shadows. The roar of the waves seemed louder here, more intimate, shielding us from the distant sounds of the party. Polo stopped in the shelter of a large, weathered rock, its surface smoothed by years of wind and waves. He turned to face me, and even in the dim light, I could see the intensity burning in his eyes, an intensity that took my breath away. He reached out and cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs gently stroking my cheekbones. "Daphne," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion, barely audible above the crashing waves. I need you." And then he kissed me again, a kiss that was both desperate and tender, erasing all doubts, all fears, all reservations. The seclusion, the darkness, the sound of the ocean all heightened the intimacy, stripping away any pretense. I responded with a fierceness that surprised even myself, my body arching into his, my hands roaming over his back, his shoulders, his chest, feeling the hard muscles beneath the fabric of his tuxedo. The rough texture of the rock against my back was a sharp contrast to the smoothness of his skin when my fingers found their way beneath his jacket. He lifted me into his arms, a low groan escaping his lips, his movements effortless, his strength undeniable. He carried me not towards the open water, but further. Was that a mistake? What happens now? The questions tumbled unspoken yet heavy in the air. He traced the line of my jaw with his thumb, a tender gesture that contradicted the wildness. "Daphne," he echoed, his voice hoarse. He didn't offer answers, only my name, spoken like a question, a plea. The silence stretched, filled only by the relentless rhythm of the ocean. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that he was just as lost as I was. We'd crossed a line, and neither of us knew where we were going. This wasn't some casual hookup. The intensity, the sheer connection, made it something far more significant and far more terrifying. The weight of it pressed down on me.